Yeah, time to do some Psycho Sorcerer shit. Wait, what the fuck? What the shit? 1,000 subscribers? Alright. Hi everyone, Joe March here, also known as Psycho Sorcerer, and as a lot of you guys know, I used to have a channel that had like 20,000 or more subscribers at some point before it went bye-bye. And back then, when I hit 1,000 subscribers, I was like, fuck yeah, let's do this, yeah! But now I'm kind of like, I don't know what, I guess we hit it. Because this channel has existed for years. We weren't trying for this, but you know what? It's here, so cue the confetti. Let's do this. Let's do a 1,000 subscriber episode. Why not? Now, when I got my old 1,000 subscribers on the other channel, I did a video that was a draw my life. So let's watch that video and see how accurate that still is. All right, guys, I found it. And what the shit? 5,000 subscribers. Man, I misremembered that shit. So the draw my life was for 5,000 subscribers. And the other video was for 10,000, right? Like, where is it? Yeah, 10,000 subscribers. I showed off my ritual tools. So I guess instead, since I hit 1,000 now, we're going to review my 5,000 subscriber video from back then. And if I hit 2,000, because we are going low, we're low barring it, then I will review my 10,000 subscriber video from back then. Let's make it happen, everybody. 2,000.
Hi everyone, Psycho Sorcerer here, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to this community of people who support and watch these videos. You guys are...
Yeah! Thanks, everybody! You guys rocked the shit out of it!
We just reached 5,000 subscribers. I don't even know how this is possible. I remember a year ago...
Well, hold on a minute.
Thinking,
how is it possible? I mean, people subscribe to the video, right? It's not really that hard to understand. All right, continue.
There's 300 people here that not only want to hear this information about the occult, but who are actively working with me, acting with me, talking to me, and things of that nature.
You know what? That's true. That's true. I was very excited back in the day to have anybody else become interested in this, especially people who weren't already in the occult. Webroot, why are you in here? Get out of here, Webroot. Shoo. Shoo, there's no virus in the video. I don't even know why you're here. Like back then I looked at it like I was trying to teach people stuff that had taken me a long time to learn because this shit wasn't just online everywhere like it is now. And I actually had to research a bunch to do it back then. And I looked at it like, you know, if you sat down and you taught a class of like 30 people and you did that for, I don't know, 5 classes a year, that would be like 150 people, right? And if you did that for 2 years, that'd be like 300 people, right? So if I had 300 people watch a video, I was like, holy shit, this is like a big deal, which I think it is when you think of it that way. And people don't really think of it that way whenever they're making videos and they get low numbers like that. But I was hitting some numbers back in these days, man. I was hitting like 1,000 watches or whatever on these videos. And it was like, okay, I definitely hadn't expected that. I just wanted like a small group of people to actually watch and follow along and think about some stuff. And maybe out of, you know, every 30 people, if one of them has a moment at some point where it helps them along the path, the whole thing is worth it. And I still have that in this channel. That's how this channel feels. And I like this feeling just like I liked it back then. But back then I got really caught up after this point on trying to get the metrics up and all that other shit. And that's kind of why eventually I was done with that shit. And I came back to just, I'm going to do content I want to do even if it's not popular.
About these things, and I thought, this is as good as it gets. Well, apparently it just keeps getting better. And you guys have continued to grow the community yourself.
Why is my closet open?
This hasn't just been about...
Why did I leave my closet open in the background of this video? Like, what the fuck? How much can I see? Can I zoom in on this? Oh, yeah. We can get way up in there. Ascent. I don't even know what the fuck that is. What we got? Can you see Reggie? Because Reggie is stored, like, right over here. You can't see him, though. There's a weapon. There's a nerd sword down here. Whatever. I don't know why I left this open for the video. That's like baby YouTuber shit.
me talking, but it's been a back and forth. I give some information, and the next thing I know, you guys are giving me information back, and we're having conversations in the comments. We're having conversations on Facebook. I'm having Skypes with people. I'm learning things that I never knew possible before. It's really proven that this process has been extremely enriching for me, and hopefully as enriching for you, but I can't say for sure, but definitely for me, enriching in everything you guys have given me, and hopefully I'm giving back as good as I'm receiving.
That's true too. I think this process of having videos, whether it be the old channel or the new channel, has really enriched my practice, and I've learned a ton and been exposed to a bunch of stuff that if I had just stayed a solitary practitioner and never reached out and talked about it and never got engaged with other people, I would definitely still be like way behind where I'm at now. So yeah, I mean, I set out to be like, man, if I can help one or two people, that's worth it. And in the end, I got helped like 20-fold whatever I put out.
And I thank you so much. And as a thank you, I wanted to do something a little different here today. So what I'm going to do now is a Draw My Life to show how I got from little baby me to now. Hope you enjoy.
I, Joseph March, was born in 1980, meaning I remember such things as the Ninja Turtles and Vanilla Ice's Ninja Rap. Ugh, bad.
Why is that the example I chose? There's lots of cool stuff from the 80s, but instead I picked the Ninja Rap. Fucking Vanilla Ice.
Memories. I was born on 7/11, which means I get a free Slurpee on my birthday. And
True.
Everyone else can get a free one too if they mention me. Oh yeah, boy!
Okay.
My father was in the military and my mother was a stay-at-home mom.
Yep.
My ancestry is primarily Polish and Irish, with some other European mixed in. This
Some
means
other.
I love folk tales and alcohol. I'm genetically predisposed to. The first half of my childhood...
I mean, that joke is less funny if you know that now I've been sober for 2 years. So I don't know. Like I definitely had to get sober at some point. So you know, alcoholism.
Was spent moving every year. I even spent time living in Japan. When my father finished his time in the military and got a civilian job, we moved to Northern Virginia like almost everybody else. In high school, my friends and I were into Dungeons and Dragons and other imagination games like that.
That did not change ever.
Means when others were sneaking out to buy beer, I was sneaking out to buy miniatures from the local hobby shop. It was actually
there was no sneaking. I'm trying to be too like witty in this video, I feel like.
Like
Whatever.
this that first interested me in the occult. Wait, what? These games are not a gateway to the occult? Well, not directly, but for some of us, they show us what we're interested in. I started studying the occult at the ripe old age of 16, which now I question if that's too early for someone to study the occult. But you know what? Who am I to judge?
Why are my legs over there? Hold on a minute. That was poorly drawn. Let's see.
Which now I question if that's too early for someone to study the occult.
Here we go. What happened to my legs? Oh my god! I thought I was reading an occult book here, but apparently I'm chopping myself in half with like the magic saw from the stage magicians. Whoa, how did he do it? Is there like a littler guy back here pretending to be my legs and I'm sitting on something back here? We gotta find the secrets revealed, guys.
You know what? Who am I to judge? I did it. I even performed a ritual related to a fictional character I was writing a story about at the time. I completely forgot that I had tried this ritual until just a few years ago, actually, where I started suddenly remembering, wait, I did do a ritual a long time ago. Anyway, when I finished high school, I wanted nothing to do with college, because I thought, school's for losers, jerks. So
I mean, I can understand that feeling. Anyway, yes, I did do a ritual, but like, I didn't research it or anything. I just was like, ooh, let's do a ritual, do. I was still like playing around with it at that age.
Signed up for the military. Nothing like having your 18th birthday in basic training.
Yeah, that sucked.
I'm not gonna lie, this is a part of my life I'm not very proud of because I did not make the cut at that time. I ended up going home with a medical discharge, not for anything mental, but for physical problems. 18-year-old me started studying the occult really hard, but I didn't really get into practicing it for a long, long time later. For some reason, I stayed armchair forever.
Now, while I did stay armchair, I also had weird fucking experiences that I probably don't talk about in here back at that same time. I was actually seeing weird shit move around and stuff like that. Like shadow people, as people would call it, and shit like that in the dark. But I didn't attribute that to what I was reading or like learning or any of that stuff back then. I just was like, what the fuck am I seeing?
I got a job with a government contracting agency, and for reasons of security, this part of my life is redacted. Eventually, I decided to go to college to get a better job, and it turns out I like college. It's nothing like high school. That said, it actually took me a couple of schools before it took. During one of them, I went clinically insane.
This is true.
I had to go on antidepressants and an antipsychotic known as Zyprexa.
All right, so I'm glad that got mentioned, because I don't remember how much of my actual past I talked about in these videos, but apparently I was at least open about that. Because Psycho Sorcerer is also a play on words in that way. Like, I, in my 20s, ended up on an antidepressant and antipsychosis because I was experiencing hallucinations. And why are they considered hallucinations instead of visions? That's a great question, but that's what the doctor said. So anytime I talk about how I see weird shit in visions and how I can see weird shit, remember that also doctors are like, here's some pills for that shit. And those pills do fuck up my ability to see any of this stuff. So keep that in mind if you're ever like, why can't I do what he did? It's like, well, my brain is not exactly the same. And some of you will be like, oh, he's just a crazy person. Could be. I don't think so. I think I practice something more along the lines of Jungian individuation, and my mind is just the way it is, and that makes it easier for me to create visualizations out of these forces. But again, don't be like, oh man, I wish I had your talent at this, and think you can get that without drawbacks, because there's other shit that happens as a result.
This is also the period in my life where I lost my faith in the Christian belief. I actually delved extremely heavily into it, reading everything I could on the Bible, reading the Bible itself, reading. I was reading the Bible and stuff. I got into, so my parents were Christian, but they didn't really make me go to church when I was younger. And then when I was in the military and I had my problems and I was going out of the military, I was in this place called Holdovers where you had to like wait for over a month to leave, and you were still like going through all this shit, and I was feeling really bad and down on myself. And at that time, you couldn't leave the fucking barrack unless you had a reason you had to leave. So church was a reason to be able to leave on a Sunday for like half the day and go see people. So I started going to the church there, and that's whenever I went back in, I got into Christianity. I was like, oh man, this is awesome. But what really happened is I had that fucking Stockholm syndrome where that was my only way to not be basically in a prison. So I went to church and I was into it, and I got baptized in the water and all that stuff like born agains do and all that good stuff. And then when I came home, I kept going to church for a while, and I read the New Testament and the Old Testament and all that shit, and reading them and actually trying to take them in. Now that I was no longer in a situation where I had to go to church, I started thinking critically about them, and that's actually why I ended up out of the church. And reading and trying to find the hidden truths therein, because that
that picture's about right.
I had already started to become. But I just couldn't reconcile a lot of what I was reading and a lot of the experiences I had in life. And I ended up falling away from it. It was a process that took several years, and lo and behold, once I actually let go of the religion, I no longer needed the Zyprexa or the antidepressants. It turns out, go figure, when you're losing your religion, it gives you a major psychological break.
This is true.
I spent some time as an atheist, then some time on the left-hand path, but eventually found myself leaning into the middle. Though I didn't know about Hermeticism yet, my views started to mirror that long before I found out what it was. My degree was in computer science, and that led to a career as a technician, repairing and building servers and things of that nature. I also moved in with my girlfriend, who was a complete badass. Over 11 and a half years later, she's still a complete badass.
Now, my friends gave me shit when they saw this video. They were like, your wife is a badass? I don't think so, bro. But to me, she is, and she always will be.
But we're married and have a 2.5-year-old son. While working as a technician...
That 2.5-year-old son is now 12, just to give you some context on how long ago this was. So we're literally watching a video from 10 years ago is what's happening right now.
And I started working on a fictional story about a character that I used to enjoy writing about back when I was a teenager. Hint, hint, it's the same one I did that ritual on and forgot all about. While events in the story were fanciful, I started to notice that certain things that I wrote affected my life very profoundly. It was almost as if the things the character was learning in the story were paralleled by things that I had to learn in real life.
Now, this is what happens if you write and you're not writing to make money. Like, if you are free to write a fictional story without the guidelines of like a publisher or anything like that, and you just write what's coming right out of your own mind, your heart, whatever, you're going to end up having certain aspects of yourself come out in the characters. And as a result, you start to go through and experience certain things from your own life, but in a kind of safe space where you can process them. And it actually does help you shadow work, basically.
And I don't mean that I was using my experiences to write it, but rather what I was writing was coming to life. It was very strange.
I mean, that's a weird way to put it. What I think I was being a little hyperbolic there. What I mean is, like, obviously if I wrote that the character fought a Cyclops, that shit didn't happen in real life. Like, a Cyclops didn't bust through my door and fight me. But if I had a character have a growth moment where he had to learn something, like to let go of something that was happening, that he was struggling to let go of, and then as a result learn a lesson, I found that I would realize that I was holding on to something similar, and then I would end up in a situation where I had to let it go too. Not because I read it and went, oh, I should let go of it, just because it seemed like life was simulating what was happening in the book. Almost like once I realized it enough from the subconscious putting it on the page, then it started to happen in real life, that the same type of lessons started to happen to me after I accepted them by writing them. Which is a weird magical phenomenon that happens if you are deep into writing in this way.
While I continued researching the occult, and I ran into some information about alchemy and the truth behind it as a spiritual science as opposed to as a chemical science.
Yeah, that shit's cool.
I noticed that many of the trials and tribulations the character was going through in the books I was writing were actually mirroring what would happen in alchemy in order to change one's self, order to reach self-transformation. So, rather than fight against that, I actually decided to go with that current. I started to study alchemy and self-transformation and purposely put the character in the book through those changes. And as I did that, I noticed that I myself started to experience those same changes in my life through sort of similar circumstances.
And that's the weird thing. If I hadn't been writing the fictional story and curious about this weird effect it had on me, I wouldn't have looked into spiritual alchemy and things like that as hard, or tried to integrate it into the work, or anything like that. So my knowledge of the occult that at this point that I was starting to share with people was only learned because I looked into shit while I was writing a fictional story to try to take some real elements from our magic systems in our world and like integrate this, sprinkle that in, or see how that affected me if my writing could actually cause me to change as well. And playing with that is what got me into magic outside of being an armchair person.
It's around this same time period that I decided to start trying magic for real.
Yep.
I became a practitioner instead of just an armchair occultist.
I don't know why I keep interrupting
it.
Past me is explaining it.
The living hell out of me, but it showed me that magic was real, and from there the rest is history.
Yeah.
I started practicing chakra breathing, meditation, and all the other things that I usually recommend for beginners. It started opening up my mind to things that I never would have expected before, and I started to be able to manifest things into my life that I wanted. I became so confident that I even took on a job.
Am I thinking about bread and then the bread is coming to me?
I wanted another job, one that was a little bit less time consuming, that would allow me to spend time with my family, and so I cast a spell for it. My expectation was that I was going to have to go out and do the job searching, but that something good would come. However, what actually happened was I got a call a few days later from someone looking to employ someone like me. They saw my resume from Monster over a year ago and decided that they had wanted to call me. And that's the job I've got now.
And that's some weird ass shit, man, because this is back when I was first starting to try magic out. And I did a ritual to get a different job, and it just manifested like that. And magic don't work that way for me normally, like since then. It's almost like when you first start to get it and it starts to click, something major will manifest for you just to show like, yeah, this works. But then you have to work for the rest of that shit. It's like the first one's free or some shit.
Making over $60,000 a year more than I was making before.
Yeah.
Not to brag, but my current salary is 6 figures, and I have magic to thank for it.
Well, my current salary back then was 6 figures. My current salary now is not, but that's because I've changed careers since then. Because as magic started moving me into beginning to desire different things out of life, I also started needing to shift into different types of work. So I have accepted lower pay in order to change careers. But that also is a choice, and that also has come about because of changes through these processes.
When I finished the 5th book in my series, it aligned with the completion of the alchemic process.
And this is back when I was still making them as a series. So originally I had planned to write 5 novels instead of the book that eventually came out, which is The History of the Keldor, is a big lore book. But there were 5 separate novels. They're all written. The first 3 are edited, but they aren't published. And the one that ended up published is the big, massive compilation of all of them into a more history tome for some reason. And then after that, I published The Continuing Adventures of X, which is actually novel style once again, but takes place after all of that. And that one is actually the masterwork. Like, if I asked somebody to read my writing, I would say just read that one. I feel like the big master tome had to get out so it was out of my head, and it tracks, like, the stuff I made this character go through for me to go through my own alchemical stuff. But an actual fun-to-read, good-to-read novel experience with the characters in the fictional world that I created is The Continuing Adventures of X, and you don't need the other book first to read it. So that's my recommendation for people who want to read my stuff. You can read the other thing if you're interested in, like, my equivalent to, I guess, what Jung did when he wrote his own Red Book and stuff. You're going to look at it and be like, well, this is dense for a fiction novel, and it's definitely not written like something that's made for the masses. That's my older book. But they're both out there. They're available on DriveThruRPG if anyone wants to read them.
No longer had a desire to write any further. The character story was done, and my own transformation was complete.
Yeah.
I immediately dropped into a depression, the likes of which I hadn't seen since back in college. It was really strange to be in such a depression.
Yeah, and so at that time, so you said only the first was published. It said, what did I write?
Found that I no longer had a desire to write any further. The character story was done, and my own transformation was complete.
So it says, these books aren't available.
Of which I hadn't seen since
only the first was published. And so at this time, I had published the first book in the series and had decided I was not going to publish the other books because it had all become too personal over the course of the process, and because the process of getting them edited and everything was messy. It was a huge mess. And the first book wasn't, like, selling. I wasn't able to get the traction I needed to bring it to the other ones. But since then, I've created, again, that big lore tome that took everything and put it together as one. And when I published that, I got rid of the first one. I took the first one out of publication because there was some conflicting stuff that had to change. The big lore tome was based on my overall notes that I had written while doing all of this alchemical stuff. And so I felt like a more true to everything view of what happened to that character would be if I wrote it that way, wrote it off of that instead of basing it off of these 5 books and the 3 that were edited. And as a result, there's different things that they don't match up. So I took the other original novel down because I didn't want people who did like the new stuff to read the old stuff and be like, why is it different? So now none of those 5 are available. And there's only the lore book and the new book. But like I said, the new book, that's the shit. Like, when I reread the new book after it was fully edited and everything else, I was like, damn, son, I actually wrote something good. And all authors will be this way about their work usually. Like, they all hate their work after it's done. I don't know why. And that's how I felt about everything I've ever worked on, except that one, that last one. I was like, this one expresses what I've always wanted to express. We finally got there. And now I feel exactly the same way I felt at this point in this video, which is I don't feel any desire to write any more books at this point.
To be in such a depression at such a good time in my life. But later research has told me that this is a time period known as the dark night of your soul.
Yeah.
During any initiatory process, this comes right before the final kick. Having been through depression before, I knew that it was something I had to outlast and get my way through. I started using magic in order to push my way past it. Not to ignore what was happening, but rather to accept all that was happening to me. To accept the negative emotion, to feel it, to really process it. And as a result, I came out of the other side unscathed. When I did, I had the moment I've talked of in other videos as my enlightenment period. A moment where I suddenly felt like I was part of everything in the entire universe, and all of the mysteries of it came to me. It was only momentary, but it was enough to change my beliefs forever. Since then,
I think anybody who's like hardcore on the path and not just using magic to try to get stuff, but rather is spiritual about it, has had one of these experiences, and once you get that taste for it, that's what makes you chase understanding it. You're like, wow, everything's different than I understood before, and I'm different now. But what does that mean? And now you're in a whole other thing. You thought you'd get to this point, and then you'd be like, now I get it, and that'd be the end of the race. But that's the beginning. That's where stuff starts.
Become a hermeticist through and through. And in meditation, I can still reach that feeling from time to time.
Yep.
With my life on track and a new job, my wife and I decided to start a family, and my son was born. I became interested in other things in the occult, in deepening my knowledge more so than in gaining material things. I had what I needed, and it was time to go deep, deep into it. I studied heavily into the Golden Dawn and worked through the self-initiation path of that. At the same time, I started studying evocation and started going up a path for that. I finished the Golden Dawn initiation first, but was doing the two in parallel. I now had enough magical knowledge and experience to speak on it with intelligence, but I was still in the midst of the path that would later become my primary path, that of evocation and invocation.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting, is that a lot of times when you do these types of works, eventually you specialize in something. And for me, it was evocation and invocation. And that, I would love to be like, that's not how it is anymore, because technically it's not. But technically it is, because you've seen my videos. I'm always talking about the gods and how the gods relate to this, and how like there's this oversoul and these other things and the primordials and how all this stuff. This is all evocation, invocation talk. This is all about spirits and pulling different forces into the self to experience different forces and stuff. My ideas on this are way more nuanced now, and I wouldn't call them evocation, invocation anymore, but that is how this process started.
Invocation path eventually led me to an initiation process that involved the Mesopotamian gods, and it was when speaking to Ishtar of the Mesopotamian gods that I was told that I needed to start making videos. It was because of her that I began to make them, as strange and bizarre as that may sound.
Yep.
Near the end of my first year of making videos, I was also...
This is also, by the way, why my symbol is what it is down here. It's the 8-pointed star. I have stylized it now. My old videos had just the straight-up Ishtar 8-pointed star on them. But even though now I always talk about Tiamat instead, even though I think these are different names for the same force overall, I leave this symbol as the representation of my channel because this was what brought me to do it.
Reaching the end of the self-initiation into evocation. I once again hit a Great Depression, but I knew this time that it was the dark night of the soul. This happens in almost every path right before the end. This time, I entered something that was like a great abyss, and the entity that I spoke to was Tiamat, Mother of Dragons. I passed through this a lot easier than either of the last two times I had experienced depression, but this was quite different. This left something with me, an experience that I'd never forget, and one that I can't well describe. As I exited the abyss and completed my training, the entities that I spoke to said that I had passed, and I had become an adept in this, and was now ready to consider myself an adept at magic. I'm not sure this means anything to anyone else, but to me, my training was finally complete. And at this point, I was about a year into making videos. During year 2, I completed everything I had wanted to talk about in videos and reached a point where I said, that was everything that I had wanted to touch on outside of my own path. And thanks to the urging of those people who watched my videos and the community that was starting to spring up around it, I decided to start talking more openly about my own path and what I was up to now. And that leads us to current day. So I hope this has been enlightening for you guys. I hope it's been fun to listen to my life up till now. And we'll continue to share it together on this channel.
Safe travels.
Until next time, safe travel.
Yeah, so I think that was true, that the initiatory process of things like the Golden Dawn, I was done with at that point. Because Tiamat was basically like, we're going a new direction from here. And for a long time, I thought, oh, I've done it. Like, I got it now. Now I just spread it to other people. I didn't realize there's layers to this shit. That, like, you'll hit that point, and what really happens is you get a breather. It's like if you graduate, but you're going to go on to another college, right? Like, if you go to... You could get your bachelor's, but you're planning to go get a master's. You're not done with school, but you're done with this school. And you're about to take a break and then go and do more school, right? And that's exactly what happened to me here, is that I was done with kind of this like overall what is the occult level of trying to get into this stuff, and I was moving into this as a spiritual practice instead of a magic trying to pull stuff toward you, the secret / power of positive thinking / power of what do you call that? Drawing things to you. Like I was getting past that and into something else, something where you're starting to touch your subconscious deeply and get to know your inner self and overcome this kind of ego you think you are to find the real you. Like I was about to start that whole journey, and I didn't realize that I was starting that journey at that point. It felt like a graduation because I was leaving the way that I did stuff before behind, but I didn't realize that's what that was. And that's also part of why I went a little loopy and shut down the old channel, because once that new process started up, I felt like, like my old shit is wrong, which is not true. It wasn't wrong. It was just a different grade, you know? And so I wish I had been smart enough to not just delete that channel, because I could have been like back on there talking to more folks and whatever. But at the time, it felt like what I needed to do. I needed to leave this space and go back to the very beginning of learning things, because I was starting something brand new. And I went through a whole additional dark night of the soul at that point, where I dropped and lost my spiritual beliefs and became an atheist for a while, and then became an existentialist and learned how to find my own values and care about that stuff. And what I didn't realize is I needed to do that hard reset in order to understand what mattered to me, in order to move into what was going to become individuation and things like that, which is the practice that I've been going through for years since then. So this was pretty accurate up to 10 years ago of where I was at that time and how I thought things worked. It's definitely changed, but I think the rest of what's happened since then is pretty apparent from the other videos that are available here on this channel. So that's pretty good. I'd give this one an 8 out of 10. So here's that old image that used to pop up on all my old videos too. You can see the Star of Ishtar right there, the 8-pointed star with what looks like an eye in the middle. You can kind of see how that's turned into my stylized symbol here. This is the new channel symbol from whenever I created this channel. Just a little different. It's Ishtar / Tiamat turned to my version of that, as I see how these things work through us, and you become your own version of those aspects and forces. This is my own version of the Ishtar Eye. I want to thank everybody for 1,000 subscribers. We're back to 1,000. Let's see where it goes from here. And until next time, safe travels.